Hey there, so we received a lot of responses to the collaboration video on feminism and the sex industry, and some of them made me think. Some of them made me puke, but I honestly think that everyone who responded was well-intentioned. And I do see this as a good opportunity for dialogue, so I'm gonna try to go through the arguments really fast because I also invited some people who are actually part of the sex industry to participate in this video. So let's get to it. No, I would not want to be a prostitute. I also wouldn't want to be an ER nurse, because I know that for me being surrounded every day by people in pain and agony would be mental torture and I couldn't deal with it. I also could not work in a factory farm. There is this girl, one of the veterinary assistants, her job is to jerk off the dogs. I would not want that job, and it's not because I think I'm too good for it. It's just because I would personally have a problem with jerking off dog penises. There are a gazillion jobs out there that I could just not do for different personal reasons. That doesn't mean that I think those jobs should be illegal. I am monogamous and I don't want the person I fuck to be out there fucking other people, period. It's just my preference. As for jobs, I would not want my husband to be a professional boxer either, because I have an issue with violence. I would not want him to be a butcher. But how do my personal feelings for certain jobs have any relevance to them being legal or not? Why do people feel they have the right to buy other people to clean their houses, cook their food, serve their coffee? Every time you step foot into a coffee bar, you know that there are people there working their butts off, probably overworking and feeling like shit, cleaning the floors, scrubbing the toilets, cleaning the table, serving you the crap that you feel entitled to order. Can't you make your own damn coffee in your own damn house? Our civilization is practically based on people providing services that other people don't really need but would rather buy. If you want to go with this argument and be honest about it, you would have to militate for criminalizing probably 90% of all existing jobs. How many industries can you name that are exploitation-free? Who made your clothes? Who built your house? You know, most normal people would agree that work conditions everywhere definitely need improvement. But not when it comes to sex, right? Because if sex is involved, we don't need improvement, we just need prohibition. And it doesn't really matter that much of the abuse comes from the fact that it is illegal. And this is again an appeal to emotions which is annoying as all hell. There have been so many times and cultures throughout human history where sex was considered to be only for procreation. If you had sex without the intention of making babies, well, that was just plain wrong. So how is this argument any better? Just because it doesn't come from a holy book but from your own personal system of values? If people want to use their sexuality only for procreation, or for marriage, or for pleasure, or for love, or for money, that is for each individual to decide, not for you and not for the law. I noticed that most of the feminists who oppose the sex industry are supporting the Swedish model, which is decriminalizing the selling of sex, the prostitutes, but making the buying of sex illegal. Now, I had a problem with this from the get-go because punishing the customers for buying something that it is legal to sell, to me, it doesn't make much sense. But regardless of that, there is no conclusive data showing that the Swedish model works in any way. The supporters of this model go on about how in Sweden, prostitution and sex trafficking are not as big as a problem as they are in other countries. But I never seen them mentioning the fact that Sweden was one of the countries with the lowest rates of prostitution and sex trafficking from Europe to begin with, even back when prostitution was legal. And what they also fail to say is that this model has created an entire different kind of black market. It didn't make prostitution go away, it just pushed it more underground. On the internet, in bars, disguised in newspaper ads, which can sometimes be even more sinister and dangerous than streetwalking. I don't have time to deal with the drugs aspect now, but I have an entire video on that, so you may want to watch that one. As for poverty, it's probably true in many cases. And I could list so many other jobs that people get into just because of poverty. I'm not saying it is a good thing. I'm just saying it is a poor argument, because I can apply it to countless other jobs that you don't militate for banning. Which brings me to the next argument, that we should not take away the stigma attached to prostitution, because it is an inherently degrading job, and if we legalize it, then people might start seeing it as something normal. Now, out of all arguments, this is the one I have the biggest problem with. And the more I think about it, the more disgusting I think it is. The only people affected by this stigma that you want to hold on to are the sex workers. And if you care at all about what they have to say, this social fatwa put onto them is more often than not more damaging and more traumatizing than their actual jobs. Now this is a fair enough argument. If prostitution is turned into a normal job, with a safer environment and safer conditions and all the benefits that a regular job has, then probably more people would be willing to do it. But consider the alternative, which is people who are unwilling to do it, being kidnapped and trafficked and forced into the industry in order to supply the demand, which is exactly what's going on right now. And think about how much money would be spared. No more vice police patrolling the streets to arrest the workers. No more prostitutes in jail. And plus the money from taxations. A lot of money that can be used to regulate the industry, to protect the sex workers, and to combat the illegal sex trafficking. As I said in the beginning, some people who are working or have worked in the sex industry were so nice to agree to participate in this video, but due to the time limit restriction I cannot incorporate all of what they sent me. If you care to hear about what they have to say, please visit their channels because trust me, they're very informative.
I got involved in the business, in the industry, about 6 months ago. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. It's not ideal. It isn't what I would want to be doing, but it does pay the electric. It pays the rent. So most of my clients, by the way, are married men, straight married men.
It was great for me because I was able to leave my job and have a lot of time to myself. But it wasn't just that. It was that I wanted emotional intimacy without emotional entanglement. And I was able to get that with sex work. I don't regret it. Not at all.
The thing that made me consider taking part in the sex industry was I found myself in a situation where I had no job, very little money, I was losing my place, and I didn't have a car. I needed something that would help me to make a reasonably decent living that I could do from home and wouldn't have to worry about, commuting and all that kind of stuff. And so, I know even back then people had told me that I had a nice voice, so I thought that I would give phone sex a try. The reason why I quit wasn't because I felt, taken advantage of or abused or humiliated or anything like that. The only thing, honestly, that I regret is that I wasn't good enough at it to keep at it.
I danced in a gentleman's club off and on for about 10 years, and still work in a gentleman's club in a supervisory position. The hardest part of being a dancer for me was not the way I was treated in the bar. The hardest part was how I was treated in society. We keep the stigma alive because we keep prostitution illegal. People don't decide what is right according to what is right. They decide what is right according to what is legal.
I've told members of my family what it is that I do, but I never went into any detail. Alright, that's not really being honest, though, is it? Most of them are under the impression that I'm a dancer.
It's a definite stigma, definite, and in a lot of different ways. There are people who want to keep the stigma on the industry and seem to do so at the expense of the people in the industry. As much as we don't want people to think it's cool to be a sex worker and it's cool to be a stripper or whatever, something has to start to change.
I hear much talk of people going into the sex industry because they have very few choices. If that's really your concern, why not work to provide those people with more choices rather than taking one of the few choices they have away?
I think that it should be legalized. I think that prostitution definitely should be legalized. There are people that have jobs that are just as dangerous, where these people put themselves in just as much of a level of risk as people that work in this industry. You don't see anybody trying to lobby against them or trying to make their jobs illegal.
Ideally, decriminalize fully. Both parties, all parts of the exchange.
You can have sex in front of a camera and get paid for it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you take away the camera, it becomes a crime. Where is the logic in this?
Prostitution and seeking the services of a sex worker needs to be decriminalized. I'm not talking about this Swedish model so many people swear by. All the Swedish model does is put the prostitute in a position where she's forced to protect the very people she's supposed to be protected from.
Even though a lot of the anti-porn feminists think that they're, fighting for a cause, that's all they're fighting for. They're fighting for causes. They're not fighting for us. They don't listen to us.